All right, everybody. Welcome to today's group coaching call. Today, we are going to be focusing kind of a narrow focus on interviewing, kind of the whole process. Actually, Bree's going to be touching on, actually what she's doing to put articles out or to put ads out to find people, and then kind of walking you through the whole interviewing and hiring process. And then we also want to touch on the review process. Hiring is one thing. Hiring is great. Hiring is very important. However, just because you hire great people, then what? You want to be able to train them. You want to be able to hold them accountable, and you want to be able to develop them and ideally create opportunities to grow them into other roles within your business, and then keep them for a long period of time. So we also want to talk about employee reviews. How do you, review employees, and how do you conduct a professional employee review? Hold, your employees accountable. When to do those reviews? What questions to ask? She has a little form, a little sheet that she's going to share with us. So I'm looking forward to today. Thank you all for joining us. And once again, I'll introduce Bree. She is a CEO of Elite Roofing, a company that I founded nearly 15, 16 years ago. We launched the roofing division in 2010, as many of you know, and Bree's been with us since essentially about 8 or 9 months into that company. She's been with us and played and fulfilled just about every role in the business. Worked her way up to the big boss woman. She's running the show now. And when on the topic of hiring, I used to do a lot of the hiring, a lot of the interviewing. Turns out I was pretty bad at it. I tend to, want to, as an entrepreneur, as someone who's taken on a million things at once, I tend to want to, just, you have a pulse, we have a good vibe, cool, you're hired. I used to take the approach of, I'll meet you for coffee or meet you for a happy hour for lunch, and we'll just talk for 30 minutes for an hour or whatever. And if I liked you, then you have a job. And that's essentially how I used to hire. And I think a lot of us kind of do similar things. Go grab a beer with somebody, and cool, you're a cool person. Let's go. But what I've learned over the years, as I've developed as an entrepreneur and as a professional in this industry, that it's very important that you have a good process for hiring people, and not just, don't just hire somebody because they have a pulse and they're available. You want to make sure to identify the right personality traits, the right characteristics that you're looking for to fulfill the position you're looking for. I also used to have a habit of, just your family, cool. Your family or your friend, cool. Here's a job. We'll figure it out as we go. We did that. We got lucky in some cases with Bree. We just hired her because she was available and needed a job. And we're like, hey, let's get somebody to file paperwork. We were blessed that she really took ownership and really developed and blossomed into a great professional that she is. But that hasn't always worked out that way, because we've hired even family that just didn't work out. They stuck with us for a little bit too long, or it just didn't work out because they were the wrong person. So don't just hire somebody just because you're friends. Don't hire somebody just because of your family. We're going to kind of walk you through the process, but the key takeaways here is you want to make sure you're hiring people. Remember the 3 rules of hiring. Okay, hire character, train skills. Okay, you hire, culture is done through hiring, not through changing people. And then you also want to hire slow and fire fast. So those are my 3 rules. You've seen the videos. I've talked about that a lot. So keep that in mind as we turn it over. And thank you, Bree. She's going to be sharing some new documents that will be uploaded into the vault shortly. And I'll let you take it away. Thanks, Bree.
Yeah, thanks, Rand. I appreciate that. I've been doing a lot of our hiring, regrettably some of our firing, and the bulk of our employee reviews for several years now. It's a part of my job I actually really enjoy. Also, it's a part of my job that I like sharing with my manager, like my management staff, like my middle management, just because it's a really fun tool for growth for your middle management, is to like push them into this super uncomfortable situation of reviewing someone's performance as well as interviewing, strangers. So I first kind of want to jump into job listing. I know that that's somewhat of a challenge, and we don't always know what direction we should take, where we should list, what kind of things we should put in our postings. So I just kind of wanted to touch on that, not for a super long time, and then I'll show you guys an example of one of our job listings. I did want to say that your job listing is everything. Like, you need to make sure that your company is a desirable company. And so that's like back end work before you even are looking at hiring and adding to your team through growth or whatever the reason that you're needing to hire. You need to make your company look as desirable as possible, just like when you're trying to get clients. Like you want to get good talent. So talent is going to be attracted to a workspace that seems engaging and somewhere that they can grow and that they have opportunity. And depending on what generation you're talking to, you want to speak to that. Like, what is the desire of that generation currently? So right now, biggest workforce, right, is millennials. And so it's a good way to start and make sure that your workspace is desirable for the generation that's the largest of our workforce right now, or what you're looking for. Maybe you want boomers, you know, so make sure your workspace and your culture fits, you know, a boomer mentality. We don't need to get too far into generations. I kind of love that stuff, but I did want to say that when you are looking for someone, we've had a lot of success. We've had challenges with some family and friends, but we've also had a lot of success with a friend that knows a friend. Like, I know somebody that's looking for a job. We've had a ton of success bringing in people that we didn't necessarily know, but they know one of our employees. We like have a very few employees at Elite that doesn't have some type of connection point to somebody else that works here. So the first thing that I do when I'm looking for an employee is I put it out to my staff, the entire company. So all my project managers, everybody internally, etc. I also really, I know that it can work to hire like more of executive positions, especially if you don't have a ton of experience yourself. But we have had a lot of success raising up from within. So basically, you know, if you have an opening, like look at who you currently have employed for you, and see if there's a way that you can pull them up while having them train somebody to take over their role. It just really, really instills a great sense of loyalty and gives a perspective that your organization cares about their growth and wants to provide opportunities for them. So if those two resources don't work for you, you can always turn to listings. What we do a lot, I've had the most success with Indeed, actually, just trying to hire somebody that didn't have a connection point. I've hired quite a few great people on Indeed, but that's mostly for administrative roles. I don't get a whole lot of engagement from Indeed when it comes to labor. So service, technicians, runners, so on and so forth. We've had more success with them, more from I know a person that knows a person, or running into people at supply houses. But if we do a listing on service technicians, we usually do that on Craigslist. So that's kind of where we have found that laborers are more looking for jobs, is through Craigslist listings. One place that we've done quite a bit of listing on, and I realized about a year ago that we've never hired anybody that applied through this platform, and that was Facebook. So I don't know, maybe some of you guys have had good experience with that. My personal experience, I've never actually hired anybody off of Facebook. So that's kind of just a background of where I list, where I choose to list, and where I choose not to.
Let me add in on the Facebook thing. We have actually found some people and had some success hiring salespeople off Facebook, but it's not necessarily through ads per se. It's more through just our online reputation. So we're always posting about our culture and our team and all the successes and all the, you know, various different things that we're posting very consistently on Facebook. So quite often, actually, we'll have, you know, people reach out to us through Facebook and say, hey, I've seen you guys on Facebook, or me personally, or whatever, and just say, hey, are you looking for any salespeople? So for Facebook, that's more of a branding to attract good salespeople, because that's where a lot of you'll find a lot of salespeople on there. But again, I haven't really tried, so I don't necessarily know what the results would be. But from what I understand, you can actually do some ads as well to attract salespeople through Facebook, but not necessarily service techs. And admin, we just haven't had to.
Yeah. Thanks for clarifying that. We haven't tried any. We've been really, really blessed in the salesman area, where we have created a very desirable organization for salesmen. I don't think we've ever posted a listing for a sales rep. definitely not within the last.
Not in a while.
decade.
Early on, we did the first couple of years, but we haven't over the last 4 or 5 years. We haven't. We actually kind of always, you know, we always actually kind of have a little bit of a waiting list, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one thing that I highly suggest when you're going to build a listing is to research other listings. And what you're looking for is you want to check for the language, the benefits that they're offering for that position, the wage or salary they're offering for that position, just to make sure that your listing isn't going to get way overlooked because there's other listings out there that are offering more cash or better bennies, or the language has made that organization seem like a much more desirable place to work, or so on and so forth. So always do your research and make sure that your ad is at least going to line up with what the, the general community around that exact job is looking like. And then once you get some apps that come back, you're only going to want to spend your time looking at the apps that meet your criteria. And so I'm going to go ahead and share one of our listings with you guys now so you can kind of see what I mean by that. Make that a little bigger. So just quick job description, a little bit of information about the company. So we talk a whole lot about we have a strong culture, that we've been named Inc. 5000's best places to work, Inc. 5000's fastest places to grow, just like any of the accolades that your organization has gotten. And if you don't have those accolades, like just still speak to the things that your organization is really good at. Just kind of a real honest description of duties. And then this is what I mean by criteria, these preferred skills. So when you get a resume back from somebody, that's what you're looking for, is that they're going to meet all of these preferred skills that you have listed on your listing. So, they're clearly defined. So if people are applying for them, maybe they didn't read your listing all the way or whatever the case may be. Especially when you're looking for, I don't know if any of you guys have gone after administrative assistants, but because we do hire up, that's the role we hire, or we raise up. That's the role that we hire the most, because we're bringing that admin up very commonly into other roles and positions within the organization. I'll put a listing out for an admin on Indeed, and I'll get 80 applications in 2 days, right? So something like that there's just a lot of people in the pool, just not worth your time, energy, or effort to look or read through any of them that don't have any of the criteria that you need. You want to list whatever benefits your company does offer, and then whether the position is full-time, and then what that compensation range is going to be. So this is an example. We have several of these, obviously, for all the job listings that we have, and we edit them based on when the time comes that we have to hire, because obviously wage rates go up, compensation rates go up, and such. But we always keep a template. I would also say, as you move into the interview process, that you narrow down your apps, and sometimes you don't have a huge pool. Like when you're looking at labor, you may not have a big pool to pull from. So you're just doing this phone interview with whoever it is that is applying. But once you've gotten down to who you're interested in, always do a phone interview. So basically in a phone interview, what you're going to want to do is just ask all the questions that would immediately disqualify this person from the job. So like, why did you leave your current job? That's a really good question to ask before you bring somebody in, because that's going to be really clear if you get the answer of, I hated my boss. Like, you're probably not going to want to waste your time bringing them in for an interview. And then I always suggest you could either do this, I'd like to do it with the phone interview and not the in-person interview, because you can set that up at the end of your phone interview. But I like to send the invite via email. So I like to send them the invite via email for the phone interview and see if they respond to it, because it just gives you a really good idea of how their digital communication is. And if they're unable to communicate at all through email, not necessarily always somebody that you want to board. And again, this is position-based too, because laborers aren't going to be good with email, or you would never hire anybody if that was your criteria when it comes to laborers. But really, really, really crucial aspect if you're looking at any type of administrative role, making sure that they have the ability and are commonly using their emails, especially when they're job seeking. So once you get through the interview questions, well, actually, let me pop over to the phone interview for a laborer. So we ask a ton more logistical questions when it comes to labor, because you want to make sure that this person's not going to be a liability for your organization. Labor just is, it's a higher risk. So you just don't want to waste your time with anybody that doesn't have a driver's license or a clean MVR. You want to know what their available hours are. If they can make it to and from work, you know, if you provide the vehicle, you still need to make sure that they can make it to the vehicle. And this is a big one, like, can you lift 75 to 90 pounds continually? A lot of people say yes to that, but may struggle with it. And then this is more for runners. Most experienced laborers, you don't have to worry about how they feel about heights, but when you're looking at runners, you do need to know. We've had a couple hires that really struggled with height. And not really realize that climbing ladders and such was going to be a challenge. So we think that's an important question to kind of add in there. So I think you can get a really good feel of a person over the phone. You can see their communication cues, like how they communicate. Do they communicate well without all the verbal cues? Because so much of our communication is done through verbal cues. So I think a phone is a good way to kind of test that. And so once you get through the phone interview, and you like the candidate and you want to go through the interview, I want to show you guys the interview template that we use. And basically it's a scoring system. So if you do have multiple candidates, you can add those together for a total. And then that gives you an ability to, you know, compare and contrast against the other candidates that you're looking for. So Reddy is going to put this in your guys' vault later today, as well as I think our administrative listing's already in there and the phone interview is already in there as well. Do you know for sure, Rand?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, and I uploaded those a while or a couple months ago, but any of the new ones we will be updating here shortly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so as far as the interview sheet goes, we just asked a couple of simple questions to get the interview kicked off. Before these simple questions, I think it is really crucial that you want to be fun and light. I like to start my interviews out with just like some like general personal banter, like nothing serious, just to put people at ease, because the last thing I want is to not hire someone because they're just really super nervous, but they're a super good candidate. So I try to make like a really, really, really comfortable situation, maybe make a silly, stupid joke. Anything like that, just at the beginning of all my interviews, to like let people know like it's okay to just be yourself. Like I just want to get to know who you are through this, you know, through this process. And so, but then you could jump right into your simple questions. Randy, do you think I should read through these, or do you think?
Yeah, let's go ahead and kind of simulate like totally what we'll be doing here for sure.
Okay. So some of our examples are simple questions. What should I know that's not on your resume? If you don't have a resume, you can just ask them to tell you a little bit about themselves. Usually the question that comes after that is like personally, and I say, tell me anything about yourself. Like I'm just trying to get to know you. We want to know where you see yourselves in 2 years. Do they have foresight? Are they looking ahead? You know, what motivates you? What makes you unique? I really like that question. And then obviously logistics, driver's license, diploma, start date, whatever you absolutely need from this human. Like if you have to have somebody by Friday, like make sure that's at the beginning of your interview, because if they say no, you can just, you know, breeze through the rest and not spend a ton of your time and energy on it. So as far as the complex questions, you're going to want to instruct them to give examples as you move into this section, because most people aren't going to, by nature, they're going to want to give you just like almost like an answer they would to the simple questions, but you want a complex answer. You want an in-depth answer. So what you're going to want to look at after you ask these questions is the situation that they're giving you, the action they took, and then the result of that example, or multiple examples if it's someone that is chatty. So Tell me about a time you demonstrated leadership skills. How do you deal with pressure or stressful situations? That's a big one when you're looking at anybody in production. So if you're hiring a production role, you want to know how they deal with stress because it's a stressful position to be in. You have to have somebody that can mitigate and maintain that stress and it not negatively impact them and everybody around them. How do you prioritize your work? We're really big on organization here. So that's also a big one for us. Tell me about a time you failed. I love that question because I think that failure breeds growth. So I like to see what examples people give and if they are centering that failure around what they learned as opposed to just something bad that happened to them.
On that note too, you can kind of tailor around like what's a big mistake that you made, but what you're looking for there is this a person that's going to take ownership of their mistakes or take ownership of their failures, or are they just going to blame everybody else for what happened?
Mm-hmm.
You're always looking for the person that's willing to take ownership of their mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you like to be managed is a big one, especially, you know, for most interviewers are going to be the direct report. That's why I always have my middle management in with me. Make sure those relationships will coincide. Values, you want to know what values are important to them. So, so I always say, like, don't break down your values for them until they break down theirs, because in lots of situations they're going to mirror you. So if you say, you know, values are important to us and these are all values, can you give us an example of some of your values? Like, make sure you're like, values are important to us, can you name a few of your values? Give them an opportunity to do that, and then go into your speech about your values, which I would take the time to do here, to let them know, you know, like, these are the things that, you know, a lead or whatever your company stands by and stands for. So they know that coming in, that those are the expectations, that they're also going to follow and live by your values while they're under your roof, basically. Extra space in case you want to add additional questions. Some closing questions. Give them the opportunity to say anything back. Is there like anything else that you'd like us to know? What is the last book you read? I always ask that question. We're really big on reading at Elite. We have a book club. Some of our books, especially for our administrative staff, at least 2 a year are mandatory. So I kind of want to know if that's something that's already a part of their life, or we're going to have to grow it into them. And then obviously the most uncomfortable question of all, like, what are your salary requirements? Don't skate away from that question. It's in your benefit to know, because you want to make sure that you're offering them, if this is the candidate for you, that you're offering them what they need to make in order to say yes, because this is a two-way relationship. We have to choose them, but then they have to choose us. So you want to make sure that you know what that range is. It also gives you the opportunity to say it's lower than what you are offering, you know, that you have a little bit of flexibility there too, that you can potentially give them a lower range or lower wage and then grow them in through raises, which also will build loyalty. There's a section in here just for your personal observations, and then your scoring chart. Which each one of these questions you'll add a score to, which you'll obviously total at the end, like I said at the beginning. So one is just no answer given or answer completely irrelevant, no examples, some points covered, not relevant, some examples, no examples, some examples. 3 is good answer, relevant information, good examples, and 4 is perfect answer, all relevant, great examples. And at the bottom here is a link to additional questions that you guys will have the opportunity to fill in if you're not really fond of the conversations used here. What's cool about this link right here too is that you can click on the question you like, and it will also give you some examples of good answers to those questions. So if you're new to this, it's just a good little website for you to peek around at to help you as you start to navigate through interviewing people. So our service is not too much different. There's a lot of the similar questions, but obviously you go back over some logistics with them. You want to make sure they have all the tools that they need in order to do the job. And you do want to know their commitment level. Most organizations, your highest turnover is going to be in labor. And I know probably everybody on this call, subcontractors or subcontracts their roof replacements. Is that accurate, Rand?
Yeah, for the most part. There's some that have in-house labor.
Okay, so when I'm talking about us personally, we're talking about our service team. That's our laborers, because we also subcontract our crews. Which I've done one of these on how to interview a subcontractor crew and hiring those as well. So obviously that's a little bit different, but we do have some information in there if that's what you guys need. I want to see if anybody has any questions on what I've gone over before I jump into the review form, Rand.
Yeah, feel free to you can type it in, raise your hand, or even just unmute yourself and fire away. So definitely throw some questions in here if there's something that sticks out. So go ahead.
Oh, or I can move on.
All right. Anybody? Bueller? All right, well, you're doing a good job explaining. So yeah, again, if you have a question that comes up, just feel free to throw your hand up, and I will go ahead and jump in. Rebecca, did you have something?
Sorry, I'm trying to get the phone just come off mute. Can you hear me?
We got you. Yep.
Hey, I'm just curious, where have you seen or had the best results for trying to hire really good salesmen? Just salesmen, have you one place better than the other? I know you said Indeed was good for administrative, but you're looking for some salesmen. Where would you go?
We have found that Facebook has been one of the best. The challenge is I'm not like the best to answer that because we haven't really actively tried to pursue salespeople since kind of early on. But the majority of what happens is because of our presence on social media and are constantly posting about our culture and our company and all these things that we're posting, it tends to catch the attention of salespeople who then reach out to us. So even if like we need a salesperson, I can just do a quick little post and I'll get a couple people interested, and that works for us. So having a good social media presence has proven to be pretty helpful for us on salespeople, as well as as you grow your sales team and your office team. That's the first place we start, is asking them, do they know anybody that they think would fit the company culture that would be a good salesperson or might be interested in kind of a little bit of a career change, and then we go from there. So we haven't had to be really aggressive from that perspective, but I think a consistent branding will help in the event that you need sales. Also, what you can do is create a landing page on your website and do SEO based on sales positions. So you want to be thinking, if somebody is searching online, just randomly searching for a new sales job, that you can position your business to show up via SEO, via Google search for sales positions there too. So that's another little bit of a tidbit for you there.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Anybody on the call that can answer that has had really good success listing for a sales position? No? Okay. All right, so I'll jump into the review sheet. And if anybody has any other questions about interviewing or tactics or anything like that, feel free to ask those kind of once we open up.
Do you want to touch on crews real quick, on interviewing crews?
Yeah, I can. I think the biggest, so obviously you don't go through questions like this with the crew because that's silly. I think the biggest aspect of interviewing crews is it's like breaking down your expectations of a crew and watching how they respond to that, more so than asking them a ton of questions. Obviously logistical questions, you need to know like how many guys there are in the crew, what kind of materials they're familiar installing, if they have any pictures or documentation that they can send you that proves that their ability to install those materials. they have their own dump trucks, general liability, workman's comp, depending on what market you're in. All of those are questions that you want to make sure that you have answers to in your interview of a crew. But I really find that the benefit of interviewing crews is to break down, like, so we have basically a checklist that we just turn around and pass around the table, and we say, these are our expectations. Can you meet them? Because you're gonna get a response whether or not you get, you know, a yes or a no, or a, you know, an honest response back. Like for us, all our guys have to be tied off, and so that's something that a lot of crews don't like to do. So that's one of the things we always get to. We're like, your crew has to be tied off, and this is what happens in the instance that you're not, if you're going to work for us. So that's a big stopping point for us usually, because the crew will, you know, usually they're honest about that. They're like, that's going to be difficult for me, or I can do my best, or, you know, as long as they're giving an answer, they're like, yes, I'm going to like try to make sure that this always happens, then we're good. But if it's like, there's no way I'm going to be able to make my guys tie off, you're like, well, you know, I can't, like, I just can't use you if you're not going to work in a safe manner, or whatever the case may be. So that would be my advice in regards to the difference and the shift in that. But still the same thing as regards to like making them feel comfortable and welcome, and trying to take guards down in the beginning. I built a lot of really, really good crew relationships, and it does start from kind of that beginning point. On that note, actually, I would say, like, when you're interviewing, whether it be crews or a candidate, an employee candidate, like, I do believe that you should trust your gut, but not your implicit biases. So I would say make sure that you know the difference between those two things as you go into hiring and growing your team. You need different minds, obviously, to make a business work, and sometimes we get in a habit of just projecting, right? We're just hiring copies of ourselves. So you want to make sure that that's not what you're doing, that you're actually hiring to fill your gaps, as opposed to just hiring people that are just like you. So that's just like a side note that I would suggest for anybody doing interviewers, like, trust your gut, but not your implicit biases. Hope that makes sense.
So give us a little bit more, give us some more depth on what implicit bias means.
So implicit bias, so basically you have an in-group that you know and understand, and then there's an out-group that you don't know and understand. And so because you don't know and understand that out-group, you fill in the blanks. And whether, you know, you can blame whatever in your life in regards to what would have caused those blanks to be filled in, because you don't really know anybody in that out-group. So your mind naturally just makes it up, but then it like translates back to you as fact. So you know, I don't really want to, you know, go into like race, but race is a big thing right now, you know, in our world. And so making sure that you're not immediately judging somebody because they come in, they're Hispanic maybe, or so on and so forth. That would be like an implicit bias, something that your brain is categorized as maybe not somebody that you'd want to hire because they're in your out group. And there's so many larger things than race. Race is just a very small bit of an implicit bias. That's just anybody that's in your out group that you don't understand, pretty much.
Makes sense. And for personalities too, right? So you tend to want to hire somebody that's similar to your own personality, and that can be dangerous. If you fill a whole company up with the same type of personality, it's really hard to get really effective work done, because you need people with different skill sets and different personalities.
Man, I don't know what Jake and Francisco would do if I did that.
All right. Okay. So in regards to reviews, I think it's crucial as far as time frame goes, that you always want to do a 90-day review. That kind of just sets the employee up to know that, like, you're gonna watch their performance, and you're gonna give them accolades where you can, and you're gonna correct them where you can, and so on and so forth. But I do believe very strongly, actually, that a review is your opportunity to celebrate your staff. I think a coaching session is the correct platform for you to correct your staff. If you're waiting for your annual review to tell your employee they're doing something wrong, they're going to be completely thrown off guard. So if you are going to put a correction on a review, make sure it's something that you've been talking to them about and been discussing with them about. And it's not going to just be this, they feel blindsided, right? Because, you know, here they thought they were doing a good job and they've never been told that they weren't. Until the review. So I like to use the reviews as my, you know, my yearly opportunity to celebrate that employee, like the things that they do well for us. And, you know, you want to still be candid and honest. You're not trying to escalate it to phony, but you do like want to use it to say like, this is, you know, this is the contribution you've made and this is why we appreciate you and this is why we want to continue to have you as a part of our family, et cetera. And then make sure through coaching sessions or, you know, fill that in with whatever opportunity that you have for positive direction, maybe is a better way to say it, than correction, that you're filling in those things that you want them to fix through coaching as opposed to just through an annual review. So basically we break our annual reviews into 3 parts. You have just a general, which is, you know, job knowledge, work quality, how's their attendance, initiative, communication and listening skills, their dependability and loyalty, attitude and respectfulness, willingness to develop skills and / flexibility, ability to accept criticism, and conflict resolution. And what you're going to do is you're going to highlight those things, you know, for whatever area is right for them, you know, whether that be exceeds that category, meets that category, or needs improvement in that category. And so the score is going to be accumulation of all 3 of the criteria. And then the wage is going to, your wage increase and your bonus is going to directly reflect that accumulative score. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the bottom. So this gives them opportunity to know what their maximum score can be. Here's where the score that they actually received is entered. The second category is values and goal setting and review. Obviously, you guys would need to put in your own values here and kind of what those mean. And then you're going to, you know, rate that employee on how they execute your company values. I think that's crucial for an organization to move in the same direction. Everybody has to have the same map, right? So our values are a map. That's how we make decisions, et cetera. So you want to evaluate how well they're doing following your company's map. So again, you just going to add those up and you'll get a total. Here is where you'll put their goal setting and review scores. You guys can obviously like manipulate that to however you guys do that within your own organizations. We do it through a color, so like green, orange, or red. So completed, semi-met, and failed, you know. And so here we put like 80% green, you know, 15% orange, you know, or in the 5% red. And then obviously that would probably exceed. When it comes to goal setting, we really like to see people get some orange and get a red from time to time, because then, you know, they're setting goals that are actually pushing themselves to achieve. Now, too many reds obviously is going to show, you know, maybe bad time management skills or whatever, but one every once in a while is good. It means they're setting smart goals. They're setting goals that are actually going to, you know, push them to drive themselves forward, as opposed to, my goal is to get all my regular work stuff done this week, you know, like super vague and obvious, you know, sort of like things. So if you guys are a goal setting company, make sure that your company is setting smart goals, especially if you're going to be incentivizing off of those goals. Because if they get 100% green, but they're all, you know, ridiculous goals, then they really didn't meet the mark. So third criteria is key performance indicators, KPIs. I just threw some in here to show the example, but this is normally blank on our template. And we just fill this in per employee, because each employee or each role is going to have different KPIs. So these are just a few examples of some that are mine. Average days to collect, so that's from the time the bill goes out to the time, you know, cash comes in, would have to be less than or equal to 30 days. Gross income 25%, net income 8%. Successful implementations greater than 2. You guys get the idea. Like overall company guild quality score of 90% or higher, strongly to agree. Job cycle length, it's basically from lead to complete. We just kind of measure how many days that takes on average. I'm in charge of our workflow, so for me that's an important date for me because it shows me that I need to look for bottlenecks or so on and so forth to make sure that jobs aren't getting tied up. So once you have all these scores listed in these 3 sections, you can add those scores together for a maximum of 75. You want to throw your own remarks here, set goals for the next year, and then analyze their goals from the previous year. You'll add any employee comments here. I'm a big fan of asking my employees, what could I have done better over the last year to better support you? So that's kind of like where you might throw in that answer. And then here's obviously just, you know, salary review. So where their current wages, what their new wages, and their bonus total. Bonus would be based off of that overall score range, which you see down here. So 75 to 61 would be considered exceeds for a $1,000 bonus. Or obviously you guys can change the bonus to whatever you want to be. Ours will change based on if we're talking about an hourly employee, a management employee, or an executive employee. Those would shift around, and then an area for signature. So you guys have any questions about the employee review sheet that we use or that we can offer you guys through the TRA platform?
On your KPIs, do you evaluate those on like a monthly basis, or is it a weekly or daily, or kind of what do you use as your metric on your KPI?
So KPIs we use annual.
Right.
So we're going to look at those over the year. I think our business.
Well, you can kind of break that out. That's in general, you know, it's an annual thing, but you also want to be thinking of tracking performance on a regular basis. So it depends on the KPI. Some can be managed monthly, annually, quarterly. You're going to kind of want to be a little bit flexible there, I would think. If that makes sense. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, Bree.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Basically, I'm really new to this. Like, we're 4 months in, so I'm like, how do I evaluate my staff and kind of encourage them to grow? And I just didn't know how often I should like evaluate the KPI metric. So, but thank you.
For your case specifically, I would think quarterly for now until you get more tenured in time in business. I would think quarterly is a good time, and or maybe a semi-annual review. Have a review like every half a year until you get more employees that have been around longer.
Thank you very much.
Who else? I think, did you have another one? Did you have one, Jake, or somebody jumped in?
Yeah, actually, I have a, can you guys hear me?
Yep, we got you.
Cool. I have a quick question. So I know the last question that was just asked was kind of similar to mine, but I know as far as KPIs, you're saying quarterly, but do you guys recommend doing weekly like check-in meetings with sales reps as far as how many leads did you source? How many inspections did you do? What was your close ratio on those inspections? Kind of what were the biggest objections you had to overcome? Do you guys recommend doing that weekly, or is that a little overkill?
Yes, I like sales to be tracked weekly. That's one of the only things that I really stand behind weekly. Weekly performance, weekly goals. And there's 4 key components that we try to track on a weekly basis when it comes to setting goals with salespeople, and they set their own goals. And the first one is self-generated leads, like what kind of leads are they able to generate? The next one is how many presentations are they doing? Not just inspections, but actual presentation. How often are you getting to the table and trying to sell a roof? And then close deals, sign contracts, and then booked revenue. So how much revenue is actually booked into the system, put into production, ready to go. And a lot of times those don't correlate directly across the board. You may sign a deal this week, but you don't book the revenue for 2-3 weeks because you're waiting on insurance paperwork or an adjustment
Okay.
or whatever. So that's why we separate those out.
Okay, so you don't go based off like average job size. So if you sign 4 this week, average 13K.
No, I want specific revenue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because a salesperson technically could have 3 meetings this week and get, some, and then look at the job knowing, hey, this is about, 12,000, this one's 20, this one's 10. And then they can put a goal that I want to book like 2 weeks down the road. They can say, all right, I want to book in 35,000 this week.
Gotcha. Okay.
Because
cool.
they know they have 3 jobs in the pipeline, So I like to actually kind of have some tangible numbers to look forward.
Cool. Thank you.
Did you say 4 metrics or 3 KPIs each week?
So there's a ton of different things to be tracking, and we have a pretty sophisticated tracking system. Not quite ready. Hopefully next year it'll be out for TRA, but
Do you want me to pull it up?
the 4 key might be a little overwhelming. I've shown a lot, but the 4 key metrics. Number one is leads, and self-generated leads. So a salesperson should be setting a goal every week of how many self-generated leads they're going to get. The next one is presentations, like how many times are they going to take that lead and actually do a presentation, an estimate, or however you want to define that metric. And then the next one is signed contracts. And the 4th one is booked revenue. Like, just because you sign a contract doesn't mean that it's actually booked and ready to go into production. So revenue ready for production is what I mean by booked revenue.
Awesome. That's the one I missed, was the signed contract. So thank you very much.
Cool. All right, we will stay on for a few more minutes, but I'll go ahead and end the recording here.